Hello, my name is Travis Whitehead, and bear with me for a few minutes while I delve into the finances of the town of Queensbury and why it is that you need to put me on the board so that these problems do not continue. You may have seen your tax bills early this year. I think they came out in January, and there were some tremendous increases. The property tax went up 59%. Some other ones went up quite a bit as well. The EMS fund went up 129%, which I haven't complained about, by the way. But I'm focusing on the property tax increase and have been for the last 8 years. I sat down with my opponent, the present Ward 4 council person, shortly before he put up this campaign poster. It would have been in the spring of 2020. I sat down with him and I went over what I'm about to go over with you and explained to him why it is that Queensbury has excessive reserves and that they need to do something about it to get that money back into our hands rather than sitting in the bank there and really acting as temptation for them to misspend those funds. You can read this press release. This and everything else will be in a file that's there's a link to down below in the description. He goes ahead and tells how every year they've been doing these 2% tax increases. They never should have become the norm, he's saying. But what bothers me here is that he says, I will commit now that if elected, I will insist the board use the reserve fund to limit property tax increases. And if the fund levels support, reduce the tax rate. It is time for the board to realize that proper planning means limiting tax increases to the amount required, not to produce additional pools of money they can use to get around the proper budget cycle. So he made this commitment to you. And just a few months ago, just a month before you got your tax bill, he went ahead and voted for a 59% property tax increase. It was absolutely not needed. While he was willing to sit down with me prior to him reading this, when I asked to sit down with him a month before the budget vote to explain this again to him, why he shouldn't do this, he refused to even sit down with me. So again, this is why I need to get on that board. Further, in May, just a few months after you got your tax bill, and by the way, that increased tax generated about $1.3 million additional for the town. Well, in this resolution passed just a few months after they increased that tax by 1.3 million, they appropriated 1.5 million out of that same fund to put it into an unassigned balance in capital reserve for projects that they don't even have any idea what they might need, but they want to stuff it there because that gets it out of this general fund, which is the target of myself and everybody else. The controller states that they must keep a reasonable amount of money in there. So if they get too much money in there, they tend to try to get rid of it. Here they try to get rid of $1.5 million. Now, this is, I had to foil this piece of information. This was available to them, which I doubt whether anybody really looked at. But this is what is actually in cash in local banks, town of Queensbury. We have to report this to the state controller every year, and we do. And you can see that as of the end of 21, December 31st of 21, which is, the latest they would have had when they made up that last budget, there was just shy of $20 million in the bank in demand deposits you can take out the next day if you wanted to. They had time deposits of about $4 million for a total of about $24 million. Now, of that money, there's about $4 million, perhaps this time deposits part, that cannot be spent. It is set aside for pensions for the firemen, this LoSAP, the perpetual care, the cemetery, etc. But the bulk of the money is there in reserves. And we absolutely do need some reserves. But in this case, we have $19.9 million of reserves on a total budget of about $33 million. That's over 50%. Without getting a dime in, they could pay for more than half a year's expenses. That is just too much. And that, you could probably should reduce that by about $10 million. If you did, and that $10 million was back in our pockets, then we could decide what to do with it, to invest in a business, to put our children through school, to put food on the table. This money instead is sitting in their pockets. Now, this puts them in a fabulous position. I mean, they can clearly say that the town is in a great position. The town is in a great position. They just have money, overflowing all over the place. If there's a problem, we've got it. If there's 10 problems, we've got it. The problem is this money is going up every year. This is the 2021. The following year, now you're up to 24 million or 23.5 million there. You still have the 4 million that you probably can't touch. I mean, this is what is, and this money does not include any revenues that we would have put in 23. This extra $1.3 million that they took from us is going to show up in next year's reporting to the controller. So, I mean, this is just out of hand. But the reason it's out of hand is that, well, for the most part, I think they don't understand what they're doing, but they do understand that being conservative, what they call conservative, making sure they don't get caught short, is a good thing. And again, you wouldn't want the town to be on the other side of that where they don't have enough money. But what they should realize is that there is a certain amount of money we should have in reserves and no more. So what was said here is, I think, the main reason why this doesn't get, there was no debate whatsoever about whether or not we should raise the taxes 59%, at least no debate that we saw. Now, a couple of years before that, there was an article by Kathleen Moore that where she was covering, back then the Post-Star used to cover these meetings, and I'll just read it here. Queensbury Supervisor John Strow admitted this week that he violates the spirit of the state's open meeting law every chance he gets. And this is a quote from John Strow. John Strow says, "We try to iron out our differences before town board meetings, but we do have thoughts on various matters that we share through emails and such." This is not allowed. Kathleen Moore called, when she saw this, heard this, called the state COG, that's the Committee on Open Government, asked them if this is allowed. And she was told, no, you can't do that by law. You can't do that. These discussions should be public discussions. So the Post-Star goes on in their editorial and say, "It's too bad he chooses to introduce a new member to the board with this endorsement of secrecy and subterfuge. The whole point of public meetings is to inform citizens of the thoughts behind board members' votes so that people who are affected know why those votes were cast." I absolutely believe in this. I believe in the law. It's not a matter of believing. It is the law. And what I can commit to you, the commitment I will make to you, which I will actually keep as opposed to my opponent, is that we will be having public debates on this. And my feeling is the reason why this will be good is if this information was out there, even though I'm just one vote in 5 on that board, I can't imagine the rest of them knowing that we have such additional funds sitting there would go ahead and vote to keep even more money yet. Now, I just recently listened to the auditor. We get audited every year, and that audit is coming out very shortly. He was in a meeting and he was going over the draft with the board. And what he pointed out was that in 2022, they ended up budgeting actually the general fund, one you have to look at, the one that should be at 25% of a year's expenditures. That's by their policy. Now, let me explain that a bit. Every town, every county has to go ahead and come up with a policy. What is a reasonable amount to keep in reserve? And Queensberry has said 25%. Now, that's as much as I've seen anybody say. But the controller says you can put anything in there that people can agree on. They don't say that for schools, however. The schools, they're told no more than 4%, 4% versus 25%. And yet what we have in there is probably 50% or close to 50%. We're not even paying attention to our own policy. These are things that have to change. And I can't change it by going to a meeting. Give me 3 minutes to go ahead and speak. Yes, Mr. Whitehead, you have your 3 minutes. Now your 3 minutes is up. Would you please sit down? They will not debate me. They will not question that. They know no one's there from the Post-Star or anything else to go ahead and make this public. This problem will just go away. Meanwhile, they sit on many, many millions of dollars that makes their life much easier and perhaps too easy. I mean, it's too easy to go ahead and say, we have money we have to get rid of, or else this guy's going to be complaining even more. So let's spend it on this. Let's spend it on that. That's not what we want. We want to have the right amount there, not excessive. If you have a policy that's 25%, even though that's as high or higher than any one place else I've seen, then why do you have 46%, which was the last number I saw from the controller, not the controller, but from the auditor. There's a big difference between 25%, which is already large, and 46, which you actually have. So this is the reason why I'm asking for your vote come November. Thank you for listening to this podcast.